Hi, everybody. Good evening. Welcome to Evoke Therapy Programs broadcast. I am Dr. Brad Reedy. Today is Tuesday, April 9th, 2024. For those of you that might be new to this broadcast, every other episode we do a live Q&A. So we have live audience members from our various program alumni that can attend live. They can submit questions. They can give me prompts, anything they want to. We also always collect pre-submitted questions. So if you're listening and you want to submit a question to have it answered on the live broadcast, you can email us at webinar@evoketherapy.com. Webinar@evoketherapy.com. Those questions will then go to the top of the queue. I'll take those first, and then I'll get to any questions that come from the live audience. If you ever have a question, you want me to do a topic you think I haven't covered, or you want to request copies of slides where I'm presenting on a topic and you want some of the quotes, you can always request those by emailing us at that same address. Before I get into the first question, let me just talk about a couple of announcements coming up. The first one is the masterclass that I'm going to be teaching on attachment-based therapy. So this is an all-day. You can get credit for this if you need credit. I get a lot of questions from parents or clients or lay people that say, "Is this just is this just for professionals?" And while I'm going to gear it toward professionals, I think most people who have a basic working knowledge of therapy would find it comfortable and informative. So you can be a layperson. You don't have to be a professional by any means. That won't be the expectation. It's just that I won't be talking to you in the role of a partner or a parent or a sibling or a layperson. I'll be talking to you in the context of being a mental health professional. Having said that, it is my strong belief, it is a core idea that I carry, that the parallel between psychotherapy and attachment-based parenting, attachment-based relationships overlaps quite a significant amount. So I think it can add to what you guys are already learning about in your own psychotherapy, your own work. We have intensives coming up. I believe the best thing that you can do for yourself is to attend to your own work, to do your own work. I believe the research is clear about that. If you have a child that's struggling, do your work. If you have a marriage that's on the rocks, do your own work. Whatever the situation is, the foundation of it is the relationship that you have with yourself. The next offering for our in-person Finding You workshop, which is our flagship therapeutic intensive, is May 1st through 5th. And that is something that we do that I think is the cornerstone of all the work that we do. It is a great springboard into your work. If you don't know what quote unquote your work is or what the work is, I think Finding You is a great way to find out what that work is. If you are doing psychotherapy and you've been in it for some time, Finding You can be a great accelerator. That's what I have found it to be in my own personal work on myself. The last announcement I want to make is the masterclass. I'm going to be teaching a masterclass on May 24th. If that's two announcements of the same thing, I'm announcing it twice. Okay, let me tell you what I was supposed to announce. The other thing that I want to mention is this Friday, I'm hosting a conscious parenting workshop, all-day workshop from 9:30 a.m. to 4:30 Mountain Time. We'll take an hour break for lunch. I'm going to be lecturing in the morning. We'll have breakout sessions and discussions after that. We'll have lunch and then a second lecture and then more breakout sessions and discussions. So if you want a deep dive into what it means to be a heroic parent, what it means to be a conscious parent, how attachment, what the attachment filter looks like from the role of a parent, conscious parenting is that opportunity. So this Friday, I'm really excited to do it. It goes really fast. So that's all the commercials. That's all the announcements. Now let's get into the first pre-submitted question. Somebody writes, my young adult daughter has lied about everything for years. She says it's because she fears my reaction, which I've acknowledged and am trying to temper. I believe she lies to cover for impulsive decisions. In doing my own work, I've realized that I cannot be in a true relationship with someone who lies so much. It's destabilizing. I make decisions based on information she gives me, only to find out it's false. One example. In high school, she reported being sexually assaulted, and I helped her report it to the police, but it turned out to have been consensual. Her lying to me is like substance use, and I don't want to be around it. But it feels like setting this boundary will only drive her to make up more elaborate lies, which will then turn me into a detective that I don't want to be. I know I cannot control her lying, but is there a way for me to address this outside of telling her she can't live with us unless she can be honest? I don't know that you can really draw some specific boundary and have her respond to it. Let's take your question in parts. Let's start at the top. Her saying that the reason she lies is because of your reaction. I believe that's a part of it. And I believe that there are other reasons too. And I think when I get that kind of information from somebody that I care about, the only concern I have is taking 100% of the responsibility of my part in it. If I only have 2% responsibility in a certain dynamic, my role is to take 100% responsibility for that 2%, if that makes sense. I can acknowledge it's true. I can, even if I'm willing to look inside myself more honestly, more courageously, more critically, and absolutely see how I set up dynamics around me where people are afraid to tell the truth to me because of my anxiety and my response. I make people feel responsible for that. So I love that part of it. You can own that. But this is what I think it confuses people. That doesn't mean that she's not accountable. That doesn't mean that she doesn't have a responsibility. The other person's responsibility, I talk a lot about safety. I talk a lot about attachment and safety when dealing with our children. But the other person's responsible for their part of the work, 100%. Now, I will tell you, in my life, I don't know if I've said this on the broadcast before, but I realized somewhere around 2010, I have been a liar my whole life. Now, I wouldn't have said that about myself up to that point because I have a sense of integrity and ethics, and I try to be honest with people when it comes to business dealings. But when it comes to telling people what they want to hear, I've been a liar. So much so that sometimes I don't even have access to the truth. I've shared this story somewhat recently that after working with a family during an intensive, the family asked me if I had room on my caseload to see them. And I was really connected to this family, and I really got them, and they felt got by me. I saw them and they felt seen by me. So there was all this draw, this pull that I could help them. That's really what kind of feeds the therapist, is if I can make a difference. So they asked me, could we be added to your caseload? And I said to them, I said, I can't answer you that right now. I'm going to have to take a few days before I answer that, because I want to tell you yes, even though it goes against what's good for me. But if I tell you yes, I'll be so consumed by my want to be helpful, for my want for you to feel helped, to be happy, to feel cared about, that I'll lose myself in the process. So you're going to have to give me a handful of days to work on this. I'll get back to you early next week and tell you my thoughts and my answers, which I did, and which I gave them a different answer. I know it. I gave them a different answer than I would have given them had I answered on the spot. That was me accepting my codependency. That was me accepting my people-pleasing nature. That was me accepting with courage that I am this person that I never wanted to be, that I don't know myself. And the tool I use with taking time was me taking responsibility. See, so in my life, the reason I'm telling you that this aspect of myself is because I know that I can sense people anxiety. I feel this with my wife. This is a core, if not the core dynamic with my wife. It is one of the most important dynamics. I want to tell her what she wants to hear. I want to make her happy. And when my wife feels anxious or scared or reactive, it really affects my nervous system. So I'm naturally inclined to tell her what she wants to hear. And I have said to her, your reaction makes it difficult to tell me the truth. And that's true. That's true. And I've asked her, and she's been willing to own that part of it, to work on that part of it, which I'm grateful for. But now going back to this question, but since I'm the liar, I have to realize that I have to tell the truth no matter how anybody reacts. That's my job. I started off the journey of the heroic parent talking about this dynamic where I went to a therapeutic intensive for myself. And what I realized at the end of it was I didn't know the answer to the big question that I had, but what I knew my job was for the rest of my life was to know myself and to tell the truth about myself to people. And I'm not talking about big decisions like I want a divorce or not. I'm talking about small decisions like I'm not hungry, or I'm tired and I don't want to talk about this, or I don't want to see that movie. Right? I need to say the things that I know are going to upset the people that I love. But because I'm so afraid that if I don't please people and give them exactly what they need, that I'll have no value and that they'll abandon me, I absolutely get stuck with it. So you have your job, and it is your job. And she has her job, and it is her job to learn to tell the truth no matter what. Both are true, neither take away from each other. It is two sides of the street, and you're in charge of keeping your side of the street clear or clean, as they say, and she's in charge of her side of the street. And the fact that you're willing to listen to her talk about your reactions and to take ownership for that is wonderful. And now the boundaries come in. Now you get to set boundaries. You get to say, see, this is the thing about Evoke that differentiates it. That differentiates us from most therapeutic programming and most parent education is I don't know the right answer for what to do. You get to decide. You can draw the line. But remember this, mom or dad or parent, whoever you are, you don't get to be right and you don't get to win. You don't get to come out on top. You don't get to win. You get to choose how to lose. And when you try to win, you're trying to control somebody else, try to control their reaction, try to control the message that they receive, the what they think and see about themselves, how they feel. And that task will never bring your soul peace. But if you can learn to go inside, to look at yourself, to tell the truth, to own your own anxiety, because it sounds like you probably have some, to find sources of safety that are internal, that are often best developed in psychotherapy or in 12-step groups, some kind of a therapy process. Meditation can do it also, to find this internal sense of safety so that you're a safer person to be around. That is your job. In terms of what you decide or the boundary that you set with her, I support whatever you want to do. And any therapist that comes and tells you this is what you should do or this is the right thing to do, I would just step away slowly. As my favorite current contemporary writer, James Hollis, talks about, you can't live anybody else's life and you can't ask them to live yours. So you work on your side of the street, you offer your truth, you set your boundary. And at the end of the day, and I talk about this with parents all the time, it's borrowed from Khalil Gibran. So it's poetic, just setting it up. But what I like to say is they're not your children. They're life's children. They get to be with you for a little time. They may have passed through you, but they're not yours. Paraphrasing Khalil Gibran, seek not to make them like you, but seek to learn from them. Remember, they're the teacher, not the student. And when you accept that you are the student and not the teacher for your children, everything changes. The perspective changes. The feeling changes. The energy, the project changes. That's what is meant when it is said that our children, our struggling children specifically, are here to invite us to deal with the parts of ourselves that we've avoided. They're here to promote our own healing. They will expose our trauma responses. They will expose our unhealed, our immature parts. That's what they do. We design them to do that. Even if they're not our biological children, we have our say with them to a large extent in terms of the environment that we create around them. Your children don't have the same access to my insecurities. That's one of the reasons why I can be more helpful for your child than you can at times. And conversely, let me be clear, my children wouldn't have the same impact on you that they have on me. My children wouldn't have access to your boundaries. That's why when we drop our children off at school or with a coach in sports, there's some benefit of saying you have to deal with that person. You have to deal with the therapist. You have to deal with the coach. You have to deal with the teacher. You have to figure that out. I can't make it work for you. So part of it is about, at this point, is about separation. Part of it is about taking care of your own abandonment fears. Part of it is about taking care of your own loneliness, your own fear of rejection, your own fear that they're going to see you as a bad parent. Those are all your projects. And if you don't consciously take on the responsibility for those things, you will unconsciously make your child responsible for them. If you don't own your fear, which is your anxiety, if you don't own your fear, you will unconsciously make your children responsible for it in the form of criticism. You'll project it on them into them in the form of criticism, and you'll project it onto them in the form of anger and resentment. If you take your responsibility, you have a shot at being free. And by the way, you're well along the way of becoming a more helpful, supportive parent for them. So wonderful question. Whatever you decide is fine. Work on your side of the street. All right, here's a long question that has come in. Somebody writes this. I think it's a long three-parter. Somebody writes and says, I'm writing to you because I don't think working on myself or apologizing to my 19-year-old son has helped. I am telling you this because he thinks we ruined his chances of a football career. He claims all we ever cared about was his schoolwork and going to college. He wants me to accept accountability for all I have done to ruin him. He said we put the bar too high. In actuality, we moved the bar down every year after we reprioritized his mental health and did not prioritize school. We did prioritize graduating from high school, and that was it. He currently believes we should support him fully as he pursues the goal of becoming a professional boxer. We now pay for his apartment, health and car insurance, medical and car expenses, and cleaning supplies. He paid for his gas and food with his job. This past weekend, he came over to discuss looking at his budget. My husband attempted to help him, but he just yelled at us and said he shouldn't be doing this on his own and we should support him in boxing completely, like we supported our older son in college and graduate school. We have our boundaries, but he is telling us some other boxer is living at home with his child and girlfriend and getting 3 meals a day. I asked him if he would want to live at home again, and our son basically said it was our fault. He couldn't live at home since we won't do for him whatever he wants. Then, after he blew up, he wanted an apology from me and accountability for ruining his life. I'd apologized several times earlier, saying I was sorry I hurt him, and I wasn't perfect, but it was hard for everyone else, and I could see how it would feel like we don't love him. He left and texted me this. I didn't say you didn't love me. I said you didn't give it to me. Like you said it to me, but getting places and being treated certain ways did not make me feel it. I wrote back and he sent me a heart sign. This person writes back and says, I do love you, and I can see that that'd be a terrible time to remember, and I hate that time as well, but it would be a different feeling for you as a child. I totally get you not feeling loved at the time, which is why I struggled with the decision and prayed about what to do. So clearly you think it was wrong, and I'm sorry it hurt you. I will always be sorry if I hurt you. I made a decision that I thought was right at the moment, and that it doesn't mean it was easy for us. You are my son, and I loved you the moment I saw you. He's adopted, and he actually told me that weekend that I told him his birth mother gave him away because he was bad. That never happened. For as much as I'm working on myself, I felt like I went through a knothole that day and a day later. I did not react, and I did what I could. But I feel like it is an epic fail if he knows I love him, but he doesn't feel like I love him. At this point, should I just let another tirade pass over and not apologize again? I wonder if some of this is manipulation to get money. Just wondering if there's anything else to say. I did say that parents wound their kids and that we call our parents idiots, but in the end of the day, we need to figure out what we will do next. He keeps going back to the past, and that does concern me and my husband. Thank you. Wonderful question, wonderful context. Great question. Let me take a few pieces apart of this question. First of all, when I talk about apologizing, I don't think it's going to do anything. I think it's evidence of you changing. I don't, when you say it doesn't work, can you hear that yet? Can you hear it yet? What you're suggesting is that if you do the right things, that he will change, that he will feel different. And that's not the goal of what I teach. I don't teach you to work on yourselves and to apologize so your children will be different. I believe that will have an impact on them. I believe that's the best shot you got. But I tell you to apologize because I want you to have the peace and the liberty and the love for yourself and the self-forgiveness. I tell you to do your work because it brings you peace. But none of this, none of it, nothing that I teach is a guarantee that your child will change one iota at all. In fact, if I were being strategic or maybe flippant, depending upon how you want to define it, what I would say to all parents listening is assume your children are never going to change. Assume that you can never flip the switch, turn the lever, whatever analogy you want to use, and get them to wise up, to become insightful, to become accountable. That's not the goal in parenting. The goal in parenting is to build a secure base inside of yourself to make your serenity your responsibility. And in your question, you can hear your lack of serenity and how it becomes dependent upon how he's reacting to you. That's the issue. Whether or not he forgives you, whether or not he gets over it, whether or not he takes responsibility for himself, whether or not he blames you, none of your business. In a sense, none of your business. That's not your purview. That's not your concern. So the question that you ask and the way that you ask it reveals the undone work that's still there, which is you can't change him. You can't just like the last question, the last answer to the previous question. You can't win. You can only choose how to love. You can't make your children feel loved. This goes for all of you. You can only love them. And think about that phrase. I talk about that sometimes. You can't make your children feel loved. You can only love them. And can you see how different one would behave if they were trying to make their kids feel loved versus if they were just loving their kids? One is trying to control how they feel, and one is just a gift, just an expression, a feeling, a way of being with somebody. So if you're wondering how can you get him to forgive, how can you get him to be accountable, how can you get him to move on, how can you get him to forgive, how move through his feelings, how can you get him to feel love, you're still in the problem. All of those questions still reveal the problem in the dynamic in the relationship. And you have to surrender, just like they have to surrender. You have to give up. You have to fail, not from a place of shame and guilt and fear, but from a place of self love, from self acceptance. That's what it's really about. So I want everybody listening, not just the person that asked this question. I want everybody listening to understand as clear as I can explain my work is not to teach you how to change your children. My work is to teach you how to change yourselves. And that change can have a profound impact on your child. But listen to the words that I choose. That change can, might, sometimes does have an impact on your child. I don't tie it that if you do it right, which is impossible, by the way, but let's just say hypothetically, if you do it right, that this guarantees some kind of outcome in the other person, in your child or your addicted spouse, right? Your addicted mother or father. The recovery, the differentiation, it's like the quote from Gandhi. I'm going to read the quote from, or I'm going to recite the quote from Gandhi that I love, that I used as the skeleton of the chapter in The Audacity to Be You on meaningful love. He said, "A coward is incapable of exhibiting love. It is only the prerogative of the brave. Projection, fusion, going home is easy, but loving another's otherness is heroic. And if we truly love other as other, not an extension of you, not an effect of your cause, if we truly love other as other, we have heroically taken the responsibility on of our own individuation, of our own life. And this heroism may properly be called love." James Hollis talks a lot about this. in the books that I read, the middle passage, the broken mirror. He talks about this fact that you can't live somebody else's life, you can't do somebody else's work, you can't breathe somebody else's breath. We want to as parents because we've been trained and we've lived our whole life that if we can control the outside world, if we can prevent the bad things from happening for us, then we will feel safe and okay. That's a fool's errand because inevitably things are going to break and bleed and fall apart. I'm going to go off it a little bit because I don't think there are any questions waiting in the queue, but I'm going to explain how central this is to what I teach. For those of you who are aware, who've seen it, I'm going to refer to Star Wars. The first one that came out in 1978 or 79, whatever it was called Star Wars at the time. Later on, it was subtitled A New Hope. You know, that's the one that with Darth Vader and Luke and Leia. That's the beginning for us. Years later, then they did the prequels, 3 prequels to that first showing, which was we found out was Episode 4. In Episode 3, the one just prior to A New Hope, the one that we call Star Wars, we see the transformation of Darth Vader into Darth Vader, from Anakin, the promising young Jedi, into Darth Vader. And George Lucas, who was a fan of Joseph Campbell, who wrote the entire Star Wars saga based on the philosophy of Joseph Campbell, which is based on Jungian psychology and mythology and all the stories that we understand and know throughout all history, basically explained this idea through the story of Anakin Skywalker. Anakin had been abandoned as a child by his father. His mother died when he was young. He'd had the horrible fortune of an orphan as a child. Terrible. So Anakin did what a lot of people do when they are abandoned in their trauma. He learned how to control his environment. And he spent his life trying to be the best fighter, the best warrior, the best soldier, the best everything. And he thought if I can control the world outside of me, then I'll be safe. That was his thinking. That's what George Lucas was absolutely consciously trying to teach us. And the thing that was the final straw that made Anakin turn to the dark side, which is a metaphor for falling prey to our fear, was that he heard a prophecy or a prediction that his wife was going to die and he loved her. And he could not think of accepting another trauma. He just didn't have it in himself. He had unhealed trauma, and this would compound the unhealed trauma so much that it would destroy him. Basically, it did. So he heard that the dark side, the emperor, had a way of controlling death, could prevent it, could bring people back from life. That was the promise. So that's what drew Anakin to the dark side. He thought that not only could he control life, but he can control death. Therefore, he could prevent pain and loss and sadness and grief. So he joined up with the dark side. And let me be clear. Darth Vader believed that he had found the solution to life's pain, life's problem, the problem of being human. That's what the whole story is about. He eventually later on brings his son Luke to the Emperor to recruit him to the dark side, to teach him his philosophy, his way of being. That's what parents think, of course. We think that we're the teachers, right? We think that we can teach our children how the world works. But Luke wouldn't have it. Luke wouldn't turn. And as Darth watched the Emperor destroy his son, the Emperor being a metaphor for the dominant culture, what society tells us about life and people and feelings and children. As he saw the Emperor literally in this episode killing his son, something in Darth Vader broke, his heart wide open. And he shoved the Emperor away and he saved his son, even though it physically killed him. His mask came off. You saw the real human, vulnerable Anakin Skywalker again. And even though he died, he was saved. He'd found love again. Whenever I teach about Darth Vader and the dark side, using the metaphor for psychological purposes, I always ask the contrasting question. If Darth Vader, at least during his dark years, became the symbol for us falling prey to our fear and trying to control things outside of us, which is what Darth was trying to do, that's what he thought the solution was, then what did Yoda do? Yoda being, of course, the metaphor for the Force, for life. What did Yoda do, for example, when he found out that all the Jedi children had been murdered? And I ask that question to people who've seen the movies, and they'll often say to me, I don't know. And the reason that you don't remember it is because it's so subtle, even if you saw the movie. He cried. He felt it. Because the cure for the pain is in the pain. The cure for the pain is not to control it or prevent it from happening. If you want to control or prevent pain from happening, my recommendation is try heroin. It works. It kills you, but it works. Try morphine. Try fentanyl. Pick your poison. Those are all chemicals that help you not feel. You can try food. You can try sex. You can try working. You can try anything that distracts you from your pain. So the challenge, the problem with living is it's inherent in us. We either have to accept the difficult and painful feelings and move through them, or we try to control them. But because we didn't have a secure attachment ourselves, we can't find enough safety inside of ourselves. So we use food and chemicals and sex and accomplishments. We starve ourselves to death. We cut on ourselves. We do everything in the world to distract ourselves from the pain until we have an experience, usually with a safe other, somebody that can sit with us through pain and through difficulty, not leave us alone in it, and we find out that we can make it and we can do it, and we start to build up a reservoir, and eventually we come to this place where we realize that we're okay, that the bird, as they say, the bird that stands on the end of a thin branch doesn't feel confident because it trusts the branch. It feels confident because it trusts its wings. We have wings. We know that branches will break. We know that children will get stuck. We know that sometimes horrible things will happen to people that we love. They'll get cancer. They can get a car accident. They might overdose. They might cut themselves. They might try to starve themselves to death in the search for this perfect body that doesn't exist, whatever it is. But we have to find some source of safety. We have to be the one that rescues us. We have to be the one who figures out that our serenity is our responsibility. So that's my longer answer to the question. If you're doing your work and you're apologizing and you're doing it from a place of what I'm describing, it inherently works. If you're doing it in the hopes that somehow it will change your child, you haven't really done it. And I don't mean that flippantly because, wow, all of us know what it's like to love somebody who hurts themselves. And if that somebody happens to be a child, it can be absolutely overwhelming. So, thanks for the question. Looks like that's all the questions I have. Just a couple tonight. Well, I'll give one more chance at the end. I'll go through my upcoming announcements. My two books, The Journey of the Heroic Parent and The Audacity to Be You, are available on Amazon and Audible. Like I mentioned at the outset, we have Finding You Intensives. That's our flagship program. May 1st through 5th is the next in-person one. We also have an online version May 17th through 19th. We have custom programs for parents, families, and co-parents and couples. So if you want a custom one, go to our website, use the QR code here on the screen, or email intensives@evoketherapy.com. We have support groups for alumni parents and current parents. Our next available support group is April 11th at 7 p.m. Mountain Time for our wilderness families, wilderness parents, current or alumni. Once a month, we have an alumni-only meeting. April 15th is that offering, April 15th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time. And then for our intensives and coaching clients and alumni, May 13th is your once-a-month offering for a support group. Contact support groups at evoketherapy.com. Go to our website or use the QR code on the screen. If you want to coach, if you're willing to work with somebody virtually, we have many coaches from a variety of backgrounds who have all been instructed in the attachment-based model, the kind of things that I talk about tonight. It could be reintegration, it could be codependency, it could be dealing with your own trauma, it could be marriage, co-parenting, supporting somebody that you love that is struggling. Contact coaching@evoketherapy.com to be matched up with a therapist that's a good fit. We ask all current parents to attend 6 of any of the following 12-step support groups: Al-Anon.org, CODA.org, FamiliesAnonymous.org, AdultChildren.org. You can also try RefugeRecovery.org, a Buddhist-inspired recovery program, or the National Alliance on Mental Illness, NAMI.org, has free classes and resources in your local community. All of these broadcasts are available on Spotify or your favorite podcast app about a day after I record them. Just go to your favorite podcast app wherever you consume podcasts and search Finding You an Evoke Therapy Podcast. Like us, subscribe to us there. You'll be notified when the new podcast is released. You can also go to soundcloud.com on your computer and listen there. You can also go to Evoke's YouTube channel, Evoke Therapy Program's YouTube channel, and watch the video rebroadcast of these with the slides and the video of me talking. You can find Evoke Therapy Programs and me, Dr. Brad Reedy, on X, Threads, and Instagram using the handles @EvokeTherapy and @Dr. Brad Reedy, respectively. And also, Evoke Intensives is on Instagram using the handle @EvokeTherapy Intensives. On Facebook, you can find us by searching Evoke Therapy Programs or Evoke Therapy Intensives. And of course, the Evoke Therapy blog is updated all the time with great stories from our staff who talk about their own journey. All right, looks like another question has come in. Somebody says, what is the difference between parent support group and alumni group? It's the same thing. It's parent alumni. So we have one, like I just mentioned, that is for current and alumni, parents. And then we have one that is just for alumni. That's for people who've been in it a little bit longer. So you have to be graduated from our program, or your child has to be graduated from our program to go to that one. But when I say parent support group and alumni group, I'm talking about the same thing. If you're in an intensives or a coaching client, you can also attend a coaching or intensive support group. And that necessarily won't be about parenting. It could be about couples. It could be about yourself. It could be about any relationship. All right, folks. Looks like that's all the questions for this evening. Thanks for joining me. I hope this is a helpful point of contact. I hope when I talk and answer these questions that you can practice thinking differently, because so much of this work is not about learning new things, but about unlearning the old things. That's really what it's about. 90% of the work is unlearning what we have been taught, what the dominant culture would have us believe. All right, folks, my next broadcast will be next week, Tuesday. It'll be on fear and love. I'll talk about these two primal sources of energy in terms of psychology and mythology. I love this talk. It's probably one of my first and most favorite talks of all time. So that's next week, April 16th at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, Fear and Love. Look forward to it. You can always email us or ask us questions in between, like I said earlier, using the email webinar@evoketherapy.com. All right, folks, thanks for joining me. I hope this was a helpful point of contact for and on behalf of the people that you love and the people that love you. Thanks for showing up to these. Thanks for listening and being willing to do your work. It does make a great difference. Have a great evening. I'll talk to you next time. Bye-bye.